Hello everyone and welcome back to another Premier Pundits podcast. We're almost at the end of a very, very, very long season. Game week 38 is on the horizon. My name is Ben Dinnery and I'm only 7 points behind my co-host with a bench boost in hand, Mr. McKenna. Where did it all go wrong, my friend?
I don't know. I was going to say, is this season as very, very, very massively long as your big bit of 1 meter ruler that you have? You know, you have a specifically big one. You know, we call it the big wood, don't we? Because you like measuring things with it. But in terms of it this season, yeah, I'm 7 points ahead of you. But this is like Sir Alex Ferguson squeaky bum time times a million. I'm really worried about the situation that you're going to catch up with me. You'll be gloating all through the summer, and obviously we'll have the Euros as well, so I might be able to redeem myself in that tournament, but you know, it's FPL. You have the bragging rights for a whole season, and that won't be one easily lived down. But yeah, it's just been one of those weird seasons, hasn't it? I mean, we're going to talk about game week 38 options. There'll be a bit of reflection now. Obviously, our big reflection will be after game week 38. But it's just been such an anomalous season, hasn't it? You know, who would have thought that Leeds would demolish Man City? Who would have thought that this weekend Brighton would defeat them? Man United have kind of fallen by the wayside. I think a lot of people have actually seen how important Harry Maguire is to that side now. And just so many incidents throughout the 2020-21 season that just make you think, I mean, it's positive in a way. It's a great advert for the Premier League that anything can and does happen. But at the same time, it just upsets your FPL teams. So what I will say, though, is there's plenty of managers that have done fantastically, and well done to them. But yeah, let's move our attention to this final weekend. I'm thinking it's going to be a high-scoring one, Ben. A lot of shocks have already happened, and I think that we're going to continue that story of going light on the defence. Do you think that that is how you're going to set up your team in game week 38?
Well, I'm going to bench boost, so it's all cards on the table. You know, I think expect the unexpected, expect a few selection clangers to be dropped in there. There are always a few shocks, always. If you look back at over the years in terms of rotation on game week 38, I mean, we touched upon it on a data show when we looked in the run-in after the international break, and that increase, well, game week 38, you know, that basically, you know, that's the outlier. That just smashes the data in terms of, you know, how many players are coming in and out. Because what you've got players, you know, effectively who, you know, teams have nothing to play for. So you've had players who've been carrying niggling injuries up until this point, and you know, managers might put them out for treatment early. You know, they're looking to maybe get them ready for pre-season. There's other managers that are looking, say Fulham, for example, you know, Scott Parker, they will be looking at his team for the championship, and losing all of those players who've been on loan. So, you know, maybe bringing in the likes of, I think Josh Onoma was one of the ones who's just come in recently, so on and so forth. So there'll be a lot of that, you know. Ideally, you want to be sticking as closely to those teams who still have something to play for, because not everything is decided in terms of those European qualification places. And maybe some of those individuals who are hoping to make one last run and impress maybe Gareth Southgate or their respective national team managers.
Yeah, and so we will talk through these defensive options with all those things in mind, because looking back to the articles that we produced and the videos on this matter, when teams have something to play for, they score a little bit more, concede a little bit less. When they got nothing to play for, they do sometimes score a bit more, but they concede a lot more as well. And so we're looking at the defensive options. Clean sheets are in mind, but I think the problem is towards this end of season time, clean sheets are a real rarity in a premium. And so the focus is on those players that are going to be scoring rather than kind of keeping the goals out, if you will. I mean, look at Alisson last week. Didn't keep a clean sheet, but he scored a goal. Absolutely fantastic. I love seeing it. But yeah, so the 5 teams with the easiest final fixtures, according to the fixture difficulty, is Burnley, Liverpool, Fulham, Sheffield United and Leeds. But I would discount Sheffield United and Fulham and throw Newcastle and Arsenal into the mix. They're the next 2 down there. Just because Sheffield United and Fulham have really got nothing to play for. They're already relegated, and our data shows that they concede a lot more when they're relegated. You're not really that enticed by those players. So let's talk through maybe some of the, we're starting with Burnley, Liverpool, etc., and then maybe some other teams that might catch our eye. With Liverpool, the question for me is a treble up, but where do you do the treble up? Do you go with TAA and Robertson? I think a lot of people have TAA anyway. Or do you look further up the field? So the question is, how likely do you think Liverpool are to keep a clean sheet? I'm not so sure, because they might be really pushing to kind of get that 4th spot, because they're so close. Especially if they win tonight, they could pip Leicester for Champions League spots. But they are playing Crystal Palace, who don't score a lot. So that is a positive thing there. And also, if you go with the Robertson and TAA over maybe a Mane, because of the situation with Jota, we don't know if he's fit, you're going to have a lot more money for the rest of your team and kind of really bolster it. So my thinking is always with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson is they're almost like midfielders, but classified as defenders. So you've got that option of a clean sheet there, which is so enticing. You've got the chance that they'll get an attacking kind of assist, maybe the odd goal. And that Crystal Palace game looks so good. But the question is, Ben, do you go with Robertson and TAA, or do you go with Mane, Salah and TAA, or what kind of combination do you think is the best?
For me personally, like I say, I own TAA and Salah. So they always be me shoe in. Those will be the first names on the team sheet. And then it would depend on how I want to build the remainder of my squad. And it's a big if. I mean, Crystal Palace have lost Eze to an injury that could potentially rule him out for the remainder of the year. So that's going to blunt their attack. Benteke's been in decent form. But if I did fancy Liverpool for a clean sheet, then I think Nat Phillips would be a player that, that he's a good enabler. That'll allow you to splash maybe money elsewhere. Some of the players that come to mind would be maybe like a Bruno, maybe even a De Bruyne. Players who still have European interests to aim for and will be wanting to prove themselves in the final game. Maybe not so much Bruno, but I think Ollie will go strong with United this weekend, because there aren't any concerns with regards to load, and that focus will be keeping their players sharp. So the Liverpool attack just hasn't got that consistency with Mane and Firmino. Diego Jota has an outside chance actually of returning to the squad, but that's only very, very small, and taking a punt on him would just be too much of a risk. So I think for me in Liverpool, I would go with Phillips and look to maybe bring another player. So it would be Salah, TAA and Phillips.
Interesting take on it. So you do have that kind of defensive coverage, but a lot cheaper, and you can put your money elsewhere. And that is the interesting thing about Jota, the situation there. I agree with you, but we'll cover that more a little bit tomorrow, and kind of Mane's data versus his data. It's an interesting kind of situation there. It could be fun, but you never know. And I think you're right in a sense. Liverpool have just been so inconsistent this season. It's only really Salah that has been, and recently Trent Alexander-Arnold has almost stepped up a little bit as well. So you don't really know what will happen. But Crystal Palace, they don't have anything to play for. It's final day, playing in flip-flops, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot going against them. That could be a high-scoring one. But let's move the focus onto Burnley then. They play Sheffield United in different form towards the end of the season. Two big worries for me is they don't have very attacking defenders, so kind of fitting our mould there of somebody who might score. And also, there is worries over Pope's fitness. Can you maybe clarify Pope's fitness situation, and then we'll kind of talk through the data and everything of Burnley?
Yeah, so actually there's two niggling problems with Nick Pope. One is a shoulder issue that goes back over a month now. Not thought to be too serious, and certainly nothing that would keep him potentially out of the Euros. But the second one, which is inhibited of the last sort of 7 to 10 days, and what kept him out of last weekend's game. At the time of recording, he's scheduled for a late fitness test ahead of Wednesday night's game, and that's a knee issue. And what I've said, again, it's not serious. It's not something that would threaten his appearance for maybe an England call-up. But when it comes to Sean Dyche and Burnley, he doesn't need to take any risks. Because you could potentially exacerbate that problem and then keep the goalkeeper out of that, England call-up. So for me, I don't see him playing on Wednesday night. I just think there's too much of a greater risk there. And again, I would have made 50-50 for the weekend, which means Peacock Farrell, is going to start. And, we've seen he just isn't a Nick Pope. Let's say that. He's a young goalkeeper. We're not a lot of Premier League experience. He's still cutting his teeth. He could turn out to be a great stopper eventually, but it's, maybe still a little bit raw at that level. And Burnley just don't look the same. They don't look as solid. They don't look as secure or safe when Peacock Farrell plays in goal. And that's totally understandable. So for that reason, at this moment in time, like I say, at the time of recording, the Burnley defence would be in a void for me.
Yeah, because, looking at their form over the last 6, they kept clean sheets against Wolves and Fulham. They beat West Ham, but then they're also embarrassed by Leeds, and it's really difficult to tell which team will turn up. Their defence has been mid-table in the last 6. Sheffield United attack has been rock bottom with 3 goals in their last 6 and 3.55 XG. But I think with them, it really is guesswork. You don't know who's going to start between the sticks. I think I'd be more happy with owning an asset if I knew that Pope was going to be there. But they also don't score a lot of goals from defensive positions. I think, we will chat about Chris Wood tomorrow. He might be a better own there. But in terms of the defensive options, I'm not too sure on them. I do like Leeds, though, and they have ended this season, I think, quite well. In terms of the circumstances, a lot of people were worried about that kind of little run towards the end of the season where they were playing the big teams, and they came out pretty unscathed. In fact, they got a victory against Manchester City. At times, they do look a bit poor, but Calvin Phillips is back in the side, and I think that is when they look their best. The question always is Dallas plus anybody else at the back? And I think Dallas is a fine own, but I think it would be overkill at this stage, especially with that final game there. There'll probably be a lot of goals, and you want to capitalise on a poor West Brom defence with the likes of Bamford, Rodrigo, Rafinha, Harrison. That there's a lot more kind of people on my watch list ahead of a second Leeds defender. Or do you disagree on that one, Ben?
No, I'm with you. I've tripled up Leeds actually, and Dallas is the obvious one that comes in. I just don't really have any confidence in anyone else. We also seen Kika Casilla start on Tuesday evening as well, with Meslier dropping to the bench, and Marcelo Bielsa has also confirmed that that's how they'll play out that final game. And yeah, look, I'm not a massive fan of Meslier, if the truth be known, but I still think as well, although they got a clean sheet at St. Mary's, he's been part of that, foundation of that Leeds backline, and it's all well and good coming in a tricky game and maybe keeping a clean sheet, but to do that consistency, over time, I think is a slight worry. So yeah, I'd be avoiding anybody outside of Dallas and sticking with Leeds a little bit higher up the pitch.
So continuing the analysis of the teams with the easiest on the fixture difficulty kind of tracker there, Arsenal are up next, and I kind of right off the Arsenal team. Brighton have been our bogey team since they've been in the Premier League. Since 2017, the Seagulls have beaten Arsenal 3 times, drawn twice, and lost only twice. And those 2 Arsenal victories were more than the 3 years apart. So it just kind of shows you how difficult we find playing against them. The other thing is Arsenal don't have particularly attacking defenders. I don't think the clean sheet is a given at all. And I think Brighton, especially after that Man City game, they're going to be up for it. Whereas Arsenal, basically since the Europa League knockout, we've not really had much to play for. There has been the handbrake a little bit off in certain situations. And then, in other ones, we just not look good at all. So, it's difficult to kind of quantify how good you think Arsenal are going to do. And I think Brighton probably will score against us. There won't be a goal scored by a defender. And so that's just a waste of a defensive option. I mean, in my head, I'd even fancy, I'm not going to go for this though, but I'd fancy a Brighton defender more than an Arsenal one, because Arsenal's attack has just been so poor recently. Looking at it in terms of expected goals, Arsenal are actually in the bottom 4 of the Premier League. Yes, we have 6 goals, but that is a huge overperformance on the 3.55 XG good goal scoring chances we've created. You can't kind of keep that overperformance up for a while, and at any game, at any point, that would happen. Whereas, somebody who is creating good chances, like a Liverpool or a Chelsea, you'd go, yeah, they can keep that up. Arsenal can't. So, I mean, I think that's a general avoid as well, Ben.
Yeah, look, I mean, hard not to disagree. If I was to plumb for anybody in that Arsenal backline, and I stress that I would not be, but, players that I tend to be drawn towards, maybe Kieran Tierney, because he looks like the best of he's a good player, and the rest of them I just see are pretty poor. I don't rate Rob Holding. I don't really rate Gabriel. I don't really rate Callum Chambers. We know David Luiz is injured and also leaving. On the opposite flank, is maybe, for those that believe in sentiment in football, a Hector Bellerin who could maybe, coming in for his final game in an Arsenal shirt, in his swan song. Does he want to go out on a high? He's a player that will bomb forward at every given opportunity. I am clutching at straws here. So it would be, Tierney or Bellerin. I think, don't forget Brighton have lost Danny Welbeck, it looks like. So, their attack's being blunted. But then Trossard came in. They've got Lewis Dunk coming back. I think it'll be a tough game. I think the Gunners might just edge it. Maybe a 2-1. Like I say, I can't really see the Gunners keeping a clean sheet for that one. And they are in a void.
Yeah, it's a sad one, as an Arsenal fan, it makes me upset. But, a team that is in the ascendancy, switching from my allegiance to yours, Newcastle, they play Fulham, the Cottagers. The Cottagers actually sit second from bottom for attack over the last 6 in terms of XG, in terms of a lot of their data. But the problem is that obviously Newcastle have gone back to the 90s, Kevin Keegan's glory days. They're getting involved with high-scoring games. It has meant an impressive attacking output, but arguably the worst defensive numbers in the Premier League over the last 6 game weeks. But do you think that Newcastle will be wanting to end on a high? Do those attacking numbers of Fulham kind of give you a little bit of hope? And also with Dubravka between the sticks, do you believe a little bit more, or do you think that it is going to be possibly a high-scoring game, but Newcastle will concede a couple as well?
I fancy Fulham to score. I think it could. I think it might be a high-scoring draw, maybe a 2-2, something like that. You have Fulham, who are playing in front of their home supporters first and foremost for the first time this season at Craven Cottage. It may be their only opportunity to witness firsthand Premier League football in their lifetime. We just don't know what's going to happen in the long term. Scott Parker has already said that this will not be the squad that we've got next season. We need to stabilise. So there will be players who are playing for contracts. There are players who want to remain at that club. That's a big incentive. The concern is it looks as if Mitrovic is either injured or certainly out of favour. You've got Macha, who is another low knee, and again, he's not part of their long-term future. So who's he going to play in there? He's put Cavallero, Lookman. I think Lookman on his day is very dangerous, and there's a lot of potential. But I still, I fancy that to be goals. Newcastle are certainly, they play the best when they're doing that counter, that low block with a 5, and then it's quick through transition, through the phases, on the break. You've got the pace of your San Maxins, your Almirons, and your Willock. So that's our threat, and I don't really see that changing for us, on that final game. So again, defenses to really avoid. I've got no confidence in Newcastle keeping a clean sheet, unfortunately. But that's I suppose that's a sacrifice when you see how many goals we're scoring up the other end.
So we talked about quite a few of the teams with good fixtures there, and we've kind of come to the conclusion that a lot of them we don't fancy very much. I want to talk about actually a couple that I like, and then Ben, if you want to add to it. Starting off with, interestingly, Manchester United. Now, I know that obviously they've lost Harry Maguire. I think they don't look as good. But the problem for, the team that are playing, Wolves, is that they have the third worst attack over the last 6 game weeks. You look at their attacking data, they're second worst for expected goals in the last 4 game weeks. XG non-penalty, second worst. Shots on target, they're just not getting a lot of stuff done. And yes, they've got an all right number of shots inside the box, but what they are creating is of very low quality, and they've actually only had 2 big chances created. So it's worrying times for a Wolves attack there that is really blunted it. And we've kind of said this all through the season. I think as well, they've kind of almost, towards this end of season run, blunted any sort of attack so that their defence is about acceptable. So they've had like a mid-table defence over the last 6 game weeks. And I think the loss of Harry Maguire is comparable to Virgil van Dijk. I think, a lot of people have really bad-mouthed Harry Maguire, saying, oh, is he worth 80 million? But the drab performances without him in the side kind of really indicate how good he is. But I do think that the data makes this clean sheet doable. Manchester United are a worse side without Maguire at the back. The question is, Ben, is there any chance that he could return for that final game, have like a little run out before the Europa League final, or is he totally ruled out?
Yep, 0 chance. In fact, it's looking highly unlikely at this moment of him actually returning for the Europa League final as well. He's not progressing as hoped. He's not really responding to treatment. They've held back on doing any official testing on him. They want to get him through this rehab, and maybe leave that to closer to the time. But as it currently stands, I think we've seen him at Old Trafford on crutches. It doesn't look great. So in terms of a chance on Sunday, none whatsoever.
So on the flip side, you look at the defensive data of Man United, and it hasn't been as good as Wolves over the last 4 game weeks. The big worry is obviously 8 goals conceded in that time frame, whereas Wolves have only had 4 goals conceded. Is my kind of trust in Manchester United a bit misplaced? Because my thoughts and feelings is Luke Shaw. He can create. He might be involved in some sort of assist there. Man United, as you said as well, will want to kind of really push in this last final game to maximise players' sharpness for that Europa League final. And yes, Wolves have kind of almost shored up at the back. I don't think they'll have a lot of goal-scoring opportunities. but they're also not great defensively this season. And Man United might take a chance that is created by Shaw or somebody else on the pitch. Do you believe that they're a good defensive option?
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides to the coin, as you alluded to. They have the one eye on that Europa League final, but Ollie will pretty much have that starting 11 mapped out in his own mind anyway. But the players may believe that there's one or two, maybe eight are locked in, and there's three maybe positions up for grabs. So players will go out on Sunday, hopefully, to try and convince the manager that they're worthy of a starting place. So you've got that. On the flip side, yeah, you've got that match in the back of your mind, and you've got those 50-50 challenges. You've got those, those ones where should you risk it, should you not? And players may not be, subconsciously just 100% at the races. And that's when maybe, those lapses in concentration, those taking their eye off the ball may cost them. And if you've got somebody like Traore who on his day can, run with the best of them, you may have an emotional return and a stress for Raul Jimenez, which would give the crowd and the team a massive lift and a boost. So there's, again, there's a lot of factors here that come into play. And look, we've seen Fulham go to Old Trafford and score a goal. And I can quite easily see Wolves, grabbing a goal at Molineux on the final game in front of their home supporters, potentially with Raul Jimenez in their matchday squad. I think, that doesn't take a huge leap of faith.
Yeah, I think the problem with all of these defensive options is there's a lot of for, but there's a lot against, and it is the end of the season time. There's a lot of considerations to make. The final one that I want to put to you, Ben, before any kind of ones that you want to talk about, Chelsea. They play Aston Villa. The problem with Chelsea is knowing who is going to play. But Aston Villa may also be a little bit boosted by Grealish returning. However, they've just not been good recently for a long time, Aston Villa. I think it was basically since that COVID outbreak at their camp. Since then, a huge downturn. They're not been an amazing attack. Chelsea have been phenomenal defensively. And going forward, their attacking data is a lot more promising now. I think Aston Villa might be blown away in this game. The question is a clean sheet. If not, Chelsea do have those defenders that do assist and attack. You got Chilwell, he got an assist yesterday in terms of the all-important game against Leicester. Reece James can be involved as well. But it is that guarantee there. Is it too much of a risky punt, or do you think that maybe somebody like Chilwell will start because he wants to almost cement his place for that Champions League final?
I would love to say yes, but I think Tuchel's just such a hard read. Sometimes, the number of changes that he's made over the past 6 to 8 game weeks, it's comparable with Pep, and we all know how difficult it is to pin down a Manchester City starting 11. What goes in FPL managers' favour is the fact that it's last game of the season. There aren't any issues in terms of load management. There's plenty of rest and recovery time between fixtures, and he should be looking to lock in that Champions League starting 11 by keeping those players sharp. So at least, in theory, you can probably name maybe the 8 strongest players, and Chilwell would be amongst them. Also, maybe Azpilicueta. I think Thiago Silva is one, in Rudiger, and dare you say maybe Reece James, and that would probably be your 3. So 5 with your 2 wing backs.
I think the question that I was actually going to ask you was, is Thiago Silva a safer option? 2 90-minute kind of appearances over the last couple. I think he is really important in the mind of Tuchel as well. Obviously, he played under him at Paris Saint-Germain, and there is that connection there between the two of them. Maybe Chilwell might be rotated with Alonso. You don't know what's going to happen with Reece James. Do you think that if you were going to take a punt on a Chelsea defender, he does get involved with goal scoring opportunities. He had 0.6 xG this weekend. He was unlucky not to score. Would you take a punt on him out of all the Chelsea defenders?
I'm stuck on Christensen, so the possibility of moving across to somebody else that have money in the bank is a possibility. I don't want to, put all my cards on the table because I know it's tight in this head-to-head. Would I take a punt on somebody like Chilwell or Silva? Yes. Look, if you're not going to take a punt on the last game week of the season, then when are you going to? I think for me, just being a differential and just looking for something a little bit, out of the norm when most people seem to be going down the Chilwell routes or the Rudiger route, would be Thiago Silva. Just as a 1 week punt, because he's had enough rest between games, and if he's fully fit, he's probably one player that will start in that Chelsea backline. He's that important to Tuchel's team.
So are there any other defensive options or any warnings you want to give to the community over defensive options before this game week 38?
I think you dismissed them at the top of the show. But I will be dipping into fan team this weekend, and I will be either double dipping or treble dipping in the Blades backline.
Goodness me.
We touched upon Burnley having almost that blunt attack, not scoring a lot. Chris Wood has been the standout, and he's the major threat. He could put the kibosh on anything, but at the time of recording, which is prior to the Newcastle game, we don't know what's going to happen to that. But Sheffield United came away with a great result in game week 36, totally unexpected, clean sheet, 1-0 victory. Again, it's their last hurrah in the top flight before dropping down to the second tier of English football. It could be Paul Higginbottom's last game in charge. The players are responding to him. They're still playing for him. They may conceivably, they could be coming off the back of consecutive clean sheets, consecutive wins, and confidence could be high. They'll want to carry that momentum across into the Championship. And I mean, their team in itself hasn't changed a great deal over the past few seasons. And, barring a couple of key injuries, a couple of tight games that they've lost, those would be for me the favourites to bounce back from the Championship next year. Like I say, if they could go in with another victory on the final day against a Burnley team, which I don't think is out with the realms of possibility, then that'll be a great finish to their season. So I am attracted by that Sheffield United backline, the Baldogs, the Bashams, the Bogle maybe. All players that I could potentially see. Egan, I would take a punt on any of those.
A lot of B's there, but you'll be hoping for an A performance from them. They're a worry for me, Sheffield United, but I can see the attraction. But I hope our discussions here on defensive options have been fantastic for you, and you give us an A+ on that. But make sure to subscribe to the channel. We got lots of great content coming up around the Euros. We're not going away. We're going to be here. We're going to be ever present talking about Euro 2021, or is it Euro 2020 plus one? I don't know. It's all up in the air at the moment. In terms of it, yes, we've got a lot to subscribe to the channel for. We've got Raj, the doctor, fantasy doctor, who'll be helping you throughout the Euros as well. We've got a lot of good tactical kind of discussions, data as always, and some good guests coming up for the Euros, but also for the Premier League as well. But for now, I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Ben just to sign us out.
Cheers, Jay. Thank you for that. So that's defensive assets done. And keep your eyes and ears peeled, because attacking assets will be followed closely by our Reddit community Q&A. So in the build-up to the final game week 38. And by the way, Jace, I think, what about the blank Euro 2020? That's what I'm going to call it.
Oh, I like it. A whole blank Euro 2020.
Just a blank Euro 2020. Yeah, for more amazing insights. Keep following, guys, and we see you all again very, very soon.